thank you, first of all, for inviting me to talk with you. Discussing bookselling is always a pleasure. I've been a bookseller for more than 30 years, nearly 40 years, and both with my own bookstores, very small, starting with one small bookstore, now with more than 1,000 bookstores, both in the United States and the United Kingdom. I think that through all of that journey, and now with very small bookstores, very large bookstores, nonetheless, the principles of how to run a good bookstore are universal, at least in the English-speaking world. And for me, it is about concentrating on core fundamentals and doing these well. If you do these well, the rest of it will look after itself. And what I believe doing it well is creating good physical bookstores. So I'm talking about real bookstores that you walk into, that have shelves, that have books in them. And the internet, the online, the social media, the omni-channel, all of this is good. Some of it can be very much appreciated by customers, but the foundations are the bookstore. And what matters is that we concentrate on those foundations. And if those aren't perfect, every cent, dollar, whatever we have, we spend on the bookstore and to ensure that the bookstore is good. And it's quite simple. We need really well-stocked bookstores. So you have to have the right books in your store, and you have to think that through. I'll talk about each of these a little more. You have to run your bookstore efficiently and not waste money. And you have to be rigorous in ensuring that you do so. You need to be good looking. Appearances matter. We are creating social spaces. We are creating visual spaces. And therefore we have to invest and create to achieve good looking, attractive environments. And finally, we need really good booksellers. The bookseller matters hugely. If it's your own bookstore, you will understand that. If, like me, you're running many hundreds of bookstores, then you have to concentrate on creating the career for the bookseller. So just to talk a little bit more about those, to be better stocked and this is how you take a bookstore which is failing. In my case, Waterstones went bankrupt, effectively 300 approximately bookstores in the United Kingdom, the biggest books chain. The same with Barnes & Noble, between 600 and 700 in the United States, not doing well. Sales declining every year for a decade, profits declining, in big trouble. How do you change that? Well, concentrate on the stock. Have the right books in each individual shop. Think about what books you want. Think about how you juxtaposition those stores, those books, how books talk to each other on your tables, on your shelves. If you can, as a bigger bookseller, or even as a smaller one, think about how you bring some individuality to the presentation of those books. And by presentation now, I'm not talking visual, I'm talking about the selection. Intellectual interest is important. And a bookstore, I think, can achieve this in the front of its store with new books relatively easily. Still needs thought and intelligence. It gets more and more difficult as you go into the back of the store, what you have on your shelves, what we call backlist, the depth of range of books that you have on history, on whatever the subject might be, children's books and the like. Think through all of that, have good books. If you're a small bookstore, it's a small number, you curate to that. If you're a big bookstore, it's big. But the principle remains, think about it really properly. Have good books in, and also have good things in there that are not books. We need to sell alongside books anything that enhances our stores, and that may be educational toys, it may be stationery, it may be greetings cards, it may be paper. Ideally, all of these things are attractive to your customers, obviously, but also sustain the fact you are a bookstore. So keep it relevant. Do not sell things in a bookstore which don't belong in a bookstore. And I think journals, paper, pens, anything that's educational, anything that stimulates the mind belongs in a bookstore. And if we do these things well, we have something that Amazon in particular doesn't do. It is about curation. So be better stocked, number one. Number two, run it efficiently. And booksellers typically are not so good at running things efficiently. And some of this is structural to our industry. We have a long tradition of being able to return to a publisher what we don't sell, returns, as we call it. This allows us to be lazy. And we have at Waterstones and at Barnes & Noble taken our level of returns from roughly 25% of all of our sales, which translated to maybe half of our new books. We would take in, fail to sell them, send them back. We now try and run Waterstones between about 3 and maybe as close as 4%, but ideally about 3%. So dramatically less. And we are on that journey at Barnes & Noble. We are now below 10%, and we're heading down to this magic number of around 3 or 4%. This is very different to 25%. And it's about running the place efficiently. And as you do all of these things around efficiency, you waste less, you have less stock moving, so logistics become easier. You have less erosion, so less books that you fail to sell. You have to discount your stock, too much stock that you shouldn't have there, less. Everything improves. And the life of the bookseller in the store becomes more interesting and more efficient. So I think being better run is hugely important. And if you are a large bookseller like we are, keep as small a head office as you can. The overhead cost should be minimized as a head office function. You are there solely to make the life of the bookseller in the store easier. And you should do so at the lowest possible cost, because it's the bookstore that matters. 3, we need to be better looking. So we really believe that a bookstore is a social space. It's a visual environment. It's a place which stimulates the eye and the mind. And therefore, we need to invest some money in this. Nice fixtures, good lighting, creating as visually attractive an environment as possible. And in better looking and more usable, in a strange way in my own head, this is where the internet for a bookseller becomes part of what you're doing. You're just creating something, even though it's through an app or it's through a website, that allows the customer to visually engage with you as well as intellectually. And as part of this, also in being better looking and more attractive to the customer, I think some kind of loyalty effort, a membership or something which allows the customer to associate themselves with the bookstore, and that personal engagement is an important thing in which to invest. And then fourth and finally, and in my view, absolutely essential is you have to have good booksellers. We all understand that if we set up our own bookstores, it is about the knowledge and the friendliness and the energy and the hard work of the bookseller. Customers come into bookstores for the personality. And we've talked about they come in for the stock. They come in because it looks attractive, but really they fundamentally come in because of the human connection with the bookseller. And if we run bookstores, then we need to invest in those booksellers, in the careers, in the training, in the development. Bookselling is something that you become better at the longer you do it. It is a vocational career. It's a career of commitment to knowledge and to opening up the world of books to readers. And bookstores, I mentioned this a couple of times, are social spaces. And again, the bookseller is the person who is the host of the social space, who makes it friendly, who ensures that anyone can come into a bookstore, who runs the reading for children, who has the personality that imparts. So we must invest in our booksellers, prioritize our booksellers. And this far too often for big booksellers has not been followed through. And I think perhaps the most important thing that I've done at Waterstones and at Barnes & Noble is make the bookseller the most important person in the company, and to do everything that we can to make their life easy and enjoyable. The other thing that we've done, I think, at both companies is concentrate on some basic fundamentals around that. What is it that we actually ask our booksellers to do on a daily basis, and set the company up to support that? And those are 5 simple principles, and the order in which we address them matters. 1 is more important than 5. You don't move on to 2 until you've done 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And those are, first principle is presentation. We have to have tidy stores. Well organized and tidy. Clean, no gaps, dust gone, no lopsided. And this is for all sorts of reasons. It's one, because it shows the bookstore is cared for. A customer is coming into a space where the bookseller cares. And we say to our booksellers, 1, absolutely get your tidiness and your appearance right. Merchandise, arrange, and have a space that is cared for. So it is this one, presentation, number 1. Number 2, what we call commerciality. We're there to sell books. We're there to make money. And commerciality is having the right books in the right place. So displays, sections, the flow. We ask our booksellers to say, have you got your commerciality right? Do you have the right books when you come in? Do you have the right books throughout the store? Have you thought through at every stage how you're going to make the store from a commercial perspective really work? So commerciality matters. It's in the front, it's on the tables, it's in the sections, it's how we recommend. And it applies also, of course, to the things in a bookstore that are not books. So concentrate and get your commerciality right. When you've done those 2 things, you've tidy and you arranged and you're neat and you've got your commerciality right, then number 3, you can do your section detail. And that is really what is going on the shelves in the back of the store. What stock do we have there? How is it arranged? Is it in the right order? Have the right books next to the right books? Is everything speaking to itself? Have you taken away the book that shouldn't be there, is in the wrong place, or is damaged? How authoritative are you? It's about range. And I think if you can do 1 and 2, get to the range, and that's where the authority of a store is created. Done 1, 2, 3, then you can start thinking about what we call number 4, local. And that is where a store which has gone through these basics, then starts to ask itself, how can I be a bit different? What is it about my customer base, the physical environment of my store, that makes me want to think about it being different? Because I'm in one part of the country, I'm in another. I have people who, I have a space, which means I need a bigger cookery section. I need the idiosyncrasies of the individual store. And local is about the bookseller now reacting and responding to the particularity of its community. And finally, 5 is what we call theatre. When you've done these, and only when you've got these 4 things right, then you can start having fun. Then you can start putting up the ribbons, doing the silly displays, getting your windows right, just having fun. And it's perhaps comes across as a little joyless that we put it at 5. But too often, I think booksellers don't do 1, 2, 3, and 4. They just jump to 5, and they think just if we're all exciting and we have something that looks extraordinary, that's enough. Bookselling is too difficult a business for that to be the case. So theatre is the last of the things that we do. And then just on top of that, I mean, once you've got these principles correct, you will have a good bookstore. It'll be a bookstore in which booksellers enjoy working, and that's absolutely essential. As I've said, the bookseller is the person who carries the store. But if you're creating these disciplines and structures around them and you're running it efficiently, then they should be able to execute against these principles. And you can teach them with an increasing sophistication. And my only final thing is that I've always thought that we are called booksellers for a reason. It's because we sell books, which I don't mean just that we sit in a store, somebody comes in and asks for a book and we take their money. I mean that we recommend particular books and champion particular authors that we, the bookseller, likes, and that we convince people to buy a book in quantity, and that is a important role that we perform. And it's important because it creates the careers of authors. So we, the bookseller, is the way in which the new author gets discovered. That we, through recommendation and passion and enthusiasm, should expect to sell lots of a particular title, and that we should always expect to do that. Find the new author, put a pile of that book up and sell it in quantity. And that's fun to do, but it's also important within the industry so that new voices come through. And one of the characteristics of when the world of bookselling is dying, as it was in the United Kingdom and in the United States, is that the best-selling books were all really boring. They were obvious. It was yet more James Patterson, yet more John Grisham. You needed Michelle Obama to write a book before you had a bestseller. This is nothing to do with booksellers doing anything. These things sell in supermarkets. They sell anywhere. What we need to do as booksellers is take the exciting author and make them a name, make their careers, create excitement in our world. That is my recipe for turning around bookstores and making them a success.